Okay, so have you ever had like one of those weird moments where you're at some event and like something totally random pops into your head?
Hmm.
So I was at this kid's Christmas party the other day, and I mean, this thing was wild, like crazy energy, and for some reason I started thinking about a wedding I went to a while back.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Totally random. But it got me thinking about how, like, even though those two things seem totally different, they can actually show us some really important stuff about how we interact with each other, like how we behave in social situations. And get this, Dostoevsky, the writer, he saw this connection too.
It is pretty amazing that he would take those two events, a children's Christmas party, which we usually think of as being all about joy and happiness, and then a wedding, which is supposed to symbolize new beginnings and love.
Exactly.
But he uses them to explore like some really deep aspects of human nature and how society works. It's not your typical holiday story.
Not at all. It's called A Christmas Tree and a Wedding. And it's super insightful. It digs into our ambitions, the games we play socially, and all those power dynamics, the subtle ones and the not so subtle ones that shape our lives. So, in this deep dive, we're going to unpack Dostoevsky's observations on these things, like how we position ourselves in relation to others, and even those little transactions that can happen underneath the surface of our relationships. And we'll do it all by looking at the scenes of this Christmas party and then the wedding that happens years later.
I think what's really cool for the listener is that right from the start, Dostoevsky introduces us to this narrator who feels like an outsider.
Yeah.
He's at this New Year's Eve party hosted by some important business guy, and you immediately get the sense that he's watching everything from a distance, kind of like he's observing a social experiment in action.
It's totally like that.
Yes.
He even describes this tall, lanky guy from out of town. You can just picture him standing there awkwardly, holding a letter of introduction, hoping to make some business deals, but everyone's ignoring him. He just stands there stroking his whiskers, looking totally out of place.
Awkward.
It's really interesting, though, how Dostoevsky contrasts that with Yulian Mastakovitch. He's the total opposite of that awkward provincial guy. He's like a VIP, the guest of honor.
Personage.
Right, a personage. And the host and hostess are falling all over themselves trying to make him happy. They want to introduce him to everyone, but they're not doing the same for anyone else.
It really shows you, the listener, how this social hierarchy works, in real life.
Absolutely.
It's almost like the host is desperate for Mastakovich's approval.
And then Dostoevsky shifts our attention to the children. You'd think this is where you'd find pure innocence, right?
Right.
But even there, he starts making these observations about how social dynamics work.
Right.
There's all this chaos with kids going crazy over the Christmas tree, toys flying everywhere. But then he focuses on this quiet 11-year-old girl sitting off to the side. She's just playing with her doll, looking all dreamy.
And what's so interesting is the detail that Dostoevsky adds right after that. Someone whispers that her father is super rich and that she already has this huge dowry, 300,000 rubles.
Wow.
And suddenly, her quiet play takes on this whole different meaning. It's not just a girl playing with her doll anymore. It's about her future financial value.
Yeah, it's like her worth is already being defined by her money.
Exactly. And this idea is still relevant today. Think about how we sometimes judge people based on how much money they have or their social status.
Oh, totally. And this whole money thing becomes even more obvious when they start giving out presents. The girl with the massive dowry gets this extravagant doll.
Right.
But a poor boy, the governess's son, just gets a plain book with no pictures. It's like this harsh lesson in social inequality, even for these little kids.
It's like they're already learning that your worth depends on your parents' status.
And then there's this red-haired boy who just wants to fit in. He tries to share his stuff with the other kids.
He even offers them rides on his back.
Yeah, anything to be part of the group. Yeah.
But they reject him. It's sad, really. It makes you think about all those invisible social barriers that exist even among children.
It's like they're already mirroring the adult world around them.
And in the end, he just goes off to play quietly with the rich girl. Like he's already accepted that he doesn't have many options.
That's almost like foreshadowing, isn't it?
Yeah. And then we come to this really pivotal scene in the story. Yulian Mastakovitch is in the empty parlor, and he's just finished talking to the rich girl's father.
Right.
And he starts mumbling to himself, doing calculations in his head. He says, 300.11.16.5 years. 4%, 500,000. It's kind of creepy how he's reducing this little kid to a bunch of numbers.
You can really see how his ambition and greed are taking over.
Yeah. It's disturbing how excited he gets as his calculations work out in his favor. And then he does this weird thing where he sneaks up on the children and kisses the girl on the head. It feels more predatory than affectionate, you know?
Yeah.
Definitely. And then he tries to get rid of the red-haired boy and starts asking the girl all these manipulative questions about her doll.
It's so unsettling. And then he asks her this loaded question. And will you love me, dear little girl, when I come and see your papa and mama? It's like he's already planning to buy her affection.
Like he's making a business deal.
Totally. And the red-haired boy, he picks up on it and tries to protect her. It's the only genuine moment of connection in that whole scene.
Yeah.
But Mastakovitch gets angry. He wants to get rid of any obstacles, even a little boy that might get in the way of his plan.
And then things get even worse in the dining room. Mastakovitch is so agitated, maybe even jealous of the little boy. He takes out his handkerchief and uses it to flick at the kid under the table. Such a mean, petty thing to do.
And when the host tries to intervene to ask Mastakovitch to help the boy out, Mastakovitch just brushes him off. He says, "Oh, no, there's no vacancy." It's clear that he only cares about people who can benefit him in some way.
He's so transactional.
The narrator actually laughs at this point. It's like a moment of dark humor. But Mastakovitch gives him this icy glare. He's not happy. And then he immediately turns on the charm for the girl's mother.
Oh yeah, he completely changes his tune.
He starts praising the girl, talking about how beautiful and well-mannered she is. The mother eats it up. All the other guests chime in with compliments too. It just shows how easily people can be fooled by appearances and smooth talk.
And then the narrator asks this really pointed question. Is Mastakovitch married? It's like he's deliberately trying to disrupt Mastakovich's performance.
And Mastakovitch knows it. He gives the narrator this look that's both searching and vindictive.
Yeah, like he's been caught.
Okay, so now let's fast forward 5 years. The narrator is walking by a church and sees a big crowd gathered for a wedding. It's a gloomy day, not exactly the perfect setting for a happy occasion. He sees the groom, and this guy is like the opposite of romantic. He's all sleek and well-fed with a big belly, and he's bossing everyone around.
Not exactly Prince Charming.
Not at all. And then the bride arrives. She's stunningly beautiful, but there's something off about her. She looks pale and sad.
It's like she's been crying.
Yeah, and she's only 16. It just feels wrong somehow.
There's this real sense of unease.
And then comes the big reveal. The narrator realizes that the groom is Yulian Mastakovitch, the guy from the Christmas party.
Oh, wow.
It's like all the pieces of the story suddenly fall into place. But it's not a happy realization. It actually makes everything Mastakovitch did at the party seem even creepier.
Definitely. And the narrator is horrified. He can't even stay for the wedding. He just leaves.
He just nopes out of there.
And as he's walking away, he overhears people talking about the bride. She's a huge heiress with an even bigger dowry than Mastakovitch was calculating 5 years earlier.
500,000 rubles.
It's all about the money.
So when you connect these two events, the Christmas party and the wedding, it's clear what Dostoevsky is trying to say.
It's a critique of social climbing and how people use each other for personal gain.
Yeah, and it's about how relationships can become like business transactions, where people are only valued for their money.
The thing that really struck me is how calculated Mastakovitch was. Everything he did at that party, years before the wedding, was part of his plan to get his hands on that dowry.
It's really sad to think about the bride. She was just a pawn in his game.
Yeah.
And the way she looked at the wedding, so sad and resigned, it suggests that she's not going to be happy in this marriage. She's lost her freedom. It's like she's been bought and sold.
Dostoevsky really makes you think about how money and social status can influence relationships, even in seemingly innocent situations like a kid's party.
And the narrator, being an outsider, helps us see all of this more clearly.
He's like our guide through this social experiment.
Exactly. So the big takeaway from A Christmas Tree and a Wedding is that even though it's a short story, it packs a powerful punch. It forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature and how our society works.
It makes you wonder if those same dynamics are still at play today, just in different forms.
Right, like how we network for jobs or how money influences our perceptions of people.
Think about your own life and the people you interact with. Do you ever see hints of those transactional dynamics?
It's something to think about.
And how can we become more aware of those dynamics and make sure we're not playing those games ourselves?
Great question.